Thanks for the kind introduction and for the invitation. You heard some stories about Iran, and I'm one of those people who earned a position in Iran for my scientific and outreach contributions, but then got penalized heavily for my scientific contribution. So it creates some sort of confusion for whether it's good to get into these activities or not. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of my story. I think everyone knows that it's not the best time to be Iranian. You get penalized and you get attacked by your own government, your own regime, and the rest of the world. It's hard for you to move freely. It's hard for you to travel to anywhere. Now you're on their Muslim ban, which doesn't let you get into the United States. And you're under screening all the time. Once you get out of Iran, you're under surveillance by both your own country and other places you go to. And this puts a lot of Iranians in a very weird position. Like many others, I left the country when I was 22, did my undergraduate in Iran, then went to Sweden, started my master's there, ended up in California doing my PhD and postdoc, got my first faculty position in Florida, and then went to London and Imperial College London, and over there I got more and more engaged with Iran because of distance. Before that, it was quite impossible to be active in Iran. Why? Because Iranian students get one entry visa. I mean, at least they used to get that, and you can never travel back. You cannot see your family easily. You're under pressure. You still have to work as an immigrant, be competitive, work hard like others under pressure, and then you might not feel always equal. Anyway, like doing more and more work related to Iran's water and environment eventually got me the invitation of the current government of Iran to go and serve as the deputy head of Iran's Department of Environment. It was a moment to make a big decision. I mean, finally, someone from my generation, the generation was born after the Revolution of 1979, getting an invitation from the government. I don't belong to the inner circle. The only reason they're inviting me is because of my science, because of what I've said, and I've always been very critical of what has been happening in Iran, water policies and so on. And do you take that, do you say yes to that offer or not? My thought was that the chance of success is pretty low, but if I succeed, then there's more space for others. There's more space for people who have left the country and have their heart back at home, people who know what they're talking about to an extent, at least technically. And so that was the decision to make. And I said yes, with a lot of hope. But I got appointed on a Sunday. I was in London. I arrived in Tehran Wednesday morning. I got arrested up, right at the airport. I mean, that was my welcoming ceremony, I would say. Everything, all my accounts got hacked. Everything, so they violated my privacy, and then the battle started. As soon as I got appointed, hardliner media accusing me of working for CIA, MI6, Mossad, and all that, and criticizing what I've said scientifically. Well, science was a good backup. I could have always fought back in interrogation, saying that what I'm saying is based on science, based on peer-reviewed publications. I never changed my word. I always tried to stick to the narratives which were based on my results. But hardliners don't understand this. Radicals don't understand this because they have a mission, they have an ideology, and it's a big battle. Now, what do you do as a scientist? I try to fight back. I try to raise my voice. I try to, stay there and help. Try to understand their concerns. Try to sit with them, talk to them, for hours. But it was getting worse and worse. You might have heard about the environmentalists in Iran. Eight environmentalists at a moment are in jail because the government is suspicious of their activities, which were about Iranian cheetahs. One is dead. And I myself eventually had to flee the country after being interrogated, arrested, and a lot of things. And it was a moment, lost for me. But let me tell you something. I mean, in those moments that I was under pressure, I was hoping. My degrees were getting questioned. My papers were getting questioned. My awards were getting questioned. So to them, it was like all done by MI6 and CIA and blah, blah, blah. I was hoping that some of my colleagues would speak up and say that this guy is a solid scientist. I was hoping that one of these agencies or organizations would have given me an award to stand up and say he got it because he deserved it. But none of these happen. Why? Because we get confused, we get frustrated as scientists when we have to fight with politics. But this story is not unique to Iran. I mean, a few weeks ago they arrested another lady doing research on population because both of us, I would say, we challenge the narrative of the government or the system, saying that, for example, we have to be food self-sufficient or we have to grow the population, blah, blah, blah. But this is not unique to Iran. And I think what is happening in Tehran right now can happen anywhere else in the world if you don't take action, if you don't speak up. I was very interested in working at the interface of science and policy. But when I sat at a very high-level position, I realized that I can convince the policymakers to an extent, technically, but as long as the society is not sold on the idea, I cannot move my agenda forward. We miss the fact. I discounted the power of society. And when I sat in that position, I tried to communicate with the people. It's never exciting or we can now go to our department head and say, I gave a talk at the high school in the neighborhood, I did this and that, which was not high level. It's not related to the Congress or Parliament and blah, blah, blah. You don't get attention. But really, that's one thing we need to do. And as I said, it's not about Iran. Yesterday, the president of Iran started questioning climate change. One of my accusations is actually trying to ratify the Paris Agreement to limit development in Iran. Who else says that? President Trump, right? Radicals are radicals, no matter if they're blonde or have black hair. There should be some genetics studies, I think. But it's the same. Radicals want walls. They like enemies. This is how they get attention. This is how they survive. And science should, politics always divide. And science should unite us. And I think we are not strongly engaging with the public. We're not talking to them. Now let's go to the other side of the ocean. What is happening to a lot of us? Sanctions has a huge impact on research in Iran, has a huge impact on flow of people freely from a country to another. A lot of students, Iranian students, are now frustrated. It has impact sometimes on publishers publishing papers. These are these things are happening in academia. This is in the scientific world. People become more Catholic than the Pope. They try to interpret things and, abide by the sanctions. We have had cases that universities in the United States saying that we're not going to review applications from Iranian students. Just a few months ago, this happened in Australia as well, because everyone is getting paranoid. I was under a lot of pressure when I was a faculty at the University of Central Florida, where the expert control officer was always walking to my office, and I was doing water and environmental research. It was not anything related to space or missiles or nuclear activities. And so I do think that we have to speak up, and believe me, right? That when you challenge the narrative sold by the radicals with facts and figures, people are smart enough to buy them. People are smart enough to get them, and that's a big threat. So I had the chance to kind of escape the country, but it came back to academia with the big strong belief in the fact that knowledge is our weapon, and that we discount the power of knowledge. We talk too sophisticatedly. We don't like talking to the lay folks. We always want big high profile stuff and so on. And this is exactly what we need. Improving our skills, our communication skills, talking to those who should know, talking to them in a simple language. Of course, the academic system also should revise a lot of its incentive structure to promote these things. But I think we are very interested in publishing high-impact journal papers, but we have our time. We're not that much interested in doing an interview, or we get frustrated by the journalists who manipulate our statements, and we always, once we do an interview, we get nervous because people attack us, people give us nasty comments, whereas when we come here in our own circles, we give each other awards and everyone is happy, and we feel important and proud. So this is my message, or what I learned. First is never be afraid of speaking up. Yes, some of us get penalized, some of us get into trouble, but science would win eventually. And the other is if we don't speak up, the people who who know how to communicate to the public win. And a good example of that is happening in the United States, where it has the best scientists, best universities in the world, some of the top researchers, and climate change is being questioned by the United States president in the 21st century. And so don't get surprised if people in the developing world don't want to ratify the Paris Agreement and are afraid of joining these things because the President of the United States is doing that. How many statements have we issued? How many times are we talking about this? Right now, there's even an overlap between AGU and COP24, which is not very, I think, constructive. But how many times have we bothered doing this? How many times have we bothered posting things online, simple graphs, explaining them, recording a simple video, and so on? And the other thing, honestly, we have to have I don't know if we can have an association or union, this and that and that. And unfortunately, some of these unions get politicized a lot of times. I know people who get funded by some of these organizations have claimed to be strong scientists, and there's no evidence of scientific research. I know that people misuse scientific environments for espionage and so on. I know that some of the good universities invest in training spies. These are evidence that people have, and then all of us get exposed. And now if we don't defend ourselves, if we don't defend our science, our beliefs, our research, then we have a hard time. If we become more Catholic than the Pope and think whatever we are doing is violation of this law and that rule, then it's hard. According to the export control officer, so back in the day, I was not even allowed to take my watch or my cell phone to Iran because it's violating the export control policies, and it's a tech transfer, right? If you want to stand by their rules and stupid things, you cannot even move around, you cannot speak, you cannot say what you believe in, and you cannot educate people. And I think scientists are smart enough to keep up the science diplomacy and exchanges, and those are very healthy. U.S.-Iran exchanges it's a very, very good example of people talking. Russians and Americans during the Cold War, they continue to talk and communicate and educate each other. And I think we should not be frustrated by these walls that the radicals want. And there is a lot to be done. And let's monitor who's missing. Last year I was missing at AGU. So who's missing and what we can do for them. And don't be afraid of speaking up. And once you do those things, even if they're in prison and they're in their cell and they're not hearing you, their families would and other people would. These systems create the benefit of doubt. Like people start thinking, something might have done wrong by this person and that person. Once people come behind them, it's really hard to sell those nasty ideas and conspiracy theories to the public. We should defend and we should speak up.